welcome. Season 3. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? And premiere, we are still on the air. Thank you so much for having us. We were unsuccessful in our award season. We took the month off to recover, but we are back, and we survived Vegas. There is a lost episode out there for you purists of the BFF show that you may or may not ever see. We had some technical difficulties, but we went into detail on Vegas. But to sum it up, Franco, did you have a good time?
I did. I had a great time. I had a great time being in by 9 p.m. on a Friday night in Las Vegas, watching the basketball game in my pajamas.
I agree with you. I had a great time. I think you and I both may be retired from Vegas as a destination for hanging out as dudes. It was fun, though. If we could just might shrink the day. Like, I would do like a 2-day bonanza and then be done with it, because that seemed to be enough for me.
Oh, me too. I think as adults, you can't do Vegas longer than 2 days. You run out of steam, there's always something to do, but you run out of money to pay for those things to do. So, yeah it's just kind of the middle ground, I think, is 2 days and healthy. But interesting seg, they disapproved that huge ruling now that any stake and gamble on sports.
I know.
Do you think that affects Las Vegas in any way?
I don't think it does, honestly. I think that it'll probably affect more your experience going into your favorite MLB, NFL team more than anything else. I think Vegas still retains Vegasness, if you will, because of the fact that it's a destination for all the bachelor parties. It's still got the event venues. It's still got a lot more to it than just gambling, and people were gambling with or without Vegas illegally since the beginning of time. So Vegas just made it easier for the casual bettor, but I think that if you were going to Vegas just to bet, then you're probably going to reconsider that as an option. But I think most people go for the experience. You're going to go to a show. You're going to go see the casinos. You're going to go and enjoy the bigger games that they have and the bigger experience. But if you're a sports fan, I think you still maybe go to the sports books. But it's going to be fun, I think, Franco, if you and I go to an NBA game, and then we can decide, all right, let's put $10 on the second half and see where this goes. I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting. I think we're still about 10 years off from that actually happening, because each league has to individualize their rule and allowances for stadiums. But it will be fascinating to see how it turns out.
So we'll see. We'll keep monitoring it. Again, nothing's really changed. The biggest thing that you'll probably see is there's some states, I believe Missouri, New Jersey, that were ready for this action to happen, literally. No pun intended for the use of the word action as it relates to betting. Hello, and Snake Eyes. And they were ready because they anticipated this ruling. So you're probably, if you live in any of those states that were on the cusp of legalizing gambling, then you're going to see something probably the next year or so. Nothing for this year's NBA Finals, but probably maybe next year's NBA Finals in a lot of these states that have already legalized it, California, New York. I think that you're going to start seeing it there. So we'll keep an eye on it. But we do have some, we come back opening season 3 with one of the bigger news stories that we've seen in a while, I think, Franco, in terms of what's risen to the national level of discussion and discourse. And that is, once again, the NFL and the national anthem, quote unquote. And I'm putting it in quote unquotes because it wasn't never even about that controversy. And the NFL, who seems to just enjoy constantly finding new ways to shoot themselves in the foot, decided to put out a new policy regarding kneeling during or protesting during the national anthem. And it reads in part that the 32-member clubs, which is suspect given a new report that just came out a couple hours ago, 32-member clubs of the NFL have reaffirmed their strong commitment to work alongside our players to strengthen our communities and advance social justice. The unique platform that we have created is unprecedented in its scope and will provide extraordinary resources and supportive programs to promote positive social change in our communities. That's the beginning, right before they get into the fact of they're undercutting the players' right to promote that social justice. And this is in part what that policy states. All teams and league personnel in the field shall stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Game operations manual will be revised to remove the requirements that all players must be on the field for the anthem. Personnel who choose not to stand for the anthem may stay in the locker room or in a similar location off the field until the anthem has been performed. A club will be fined by the league if its personnel are on the field and do not stand and show respect Again, let's unpack that sentence in a little bit, Franco. For the flag and the anthem, each club can develop its own work rules consistent with the above principles regarding its personnel who do not stand and show respect for the anthem. The commissioner will impose appropriate discipline on league personnel who do not stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Before we deep dive, I keep talking, Franco. I want to give you turn the mic over to you. Given what I just read, what have been your thoughts the last couple days dealing and sort of digesting this policy?
So, twofold. First, I think this entire situation with standing, kneeling, so on and so forth, the NFL's decision to legislate it, is a giant sign that the NFL fears Donald Trump and fears the people that support Donald Trump, because whether you like it or not, the NFL is huge, but its bread and butter is the Rust Belt, the blue-collar worker. They're the ones that mortgage our house to make sure they have season tickets to their favorite team. So they're appealing to that denominator. And I think the respect and all these other words, it's about money. It's always been about money. It's not about the flag. It was about the flag 10 years ago. They wouldn't have been charging the military to display the flag before games or to promote armed services. So let's cut the nonsense. It's not about respect, it's about money in the first place. And two, this whole respect the flag idea, I don't know where they get the idea that the right to protest is a disrespect to the flag. And fine, but here's my caveat to the whole thing. If we're going to say if you're on the field you have to stand, great. Cameras should then be turned off. No more selling beer. And anybody in the stadium must stop moving to genuflect to the flag. If that's going to be the standard, the NFL says it's going to be the standard, then we all need to abide by it. That means no more Al Michaels running his mouth, no more Tony Romo talking about the one time his sister threw a spiral pass in the backyard and how it relates to Terrell Owens one time throwing a gadget play to Brett Favre. None of it. If we're going to do the whole anthem thing, you're going to televise it, you can't. Everybody has to stop what they're doing and respect it, and it's not going to be shown on TV. End of story. But what do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I think I mean, how many times have you and I experienced this, Franco, where you're at a stadium, the anthem starts to play, half the crowd doesn't stop doing what they were doing. And then the other half, if they do stop, they're not taking off their hat, they're just standing there. And you're right, beer sales still go on, food sales still go on, the personnel on the field that are not NFL employees are still wandering around, meandering media, so forth. So it is kind of a farce to say that we're going to impose it on this specific population at the game, but everybody else doesn't have to worry about it, and they're not having that conversation. And then the other point you made is a fantastic one. It was in 2009 that this whole process, or maybe earlier than that, but that's when the NFL started accepting money from the Department of Defense for salute to service programming. They used to not have this be a mandatory component of their game. It used to be where the players were just inside, they'd have the anthem, and then they would start. But then the NFL decided that they wanted to invest in patriotism and make that their bread and butter to gain more traction and to sort of insulate themselves as America's pastime. And then that's where we got into the issues that we are in now, where all of a sudden it's disrespecting the flag and being an anti-patriot, where, again, it's further from the truth. It was just started by Colin Kaepernick to use the platform, who knew there were cameras on him, as a social justice movement. So the fact that that is even lost in the narrative, Franco, is even more infuriating, that the NFL, who, and I think maybe you and I can agree on this, to me, it seemed like by the end of the last season, Franco, there really weren't too many more protests that were gaining the level of attention that was had in the beginning part of the season. So while there may have been the occasional player kneeling or raising a fist, the conversation had kind of moved past that and then regained some focus on why the players were doing it. But this policy is like throwing gasoline and then trying to furiously light a fire on a old flame that diminished almost completely, and it was just a little bit of spark left, Franco, and this thing just busted it wide open.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many nuances this we could talk about for hours. There's a whole subjugation part of it, where you have a mostly white ownership telling a set of African-American employees they can't really express themselves and protest a crime that's still being committed at a very high level. Even though the media is not covering it, young minorities and minorities are still being killed at a high rate by police officers, which is the whole point of the protest. That's still happening. But instead, our focus is on this regulation. It's on Trump saying that anybody that kneels should be thrown out of the U.S., which we won't get into all the way, but I will say. So basically, Trump wants anybody that uses their First Amendment rights to express dissidence to be thrown out of the United States. I just want us all to pause and consider what that means for everything going on in the world. But that's not here or there. It's a bad decision by the NFL. It's going to bite them in the rear end eventually. If I made millions of dollars and I had something to protest, I probably could stand to take one fine and pay the team off for it at least once. And you'll see that happen, I think. It's the wrong decision, and it's misleading the language they use. And again, I think we should just round it out and call it what it is. It's a money grab. It's the NFL being afraid of current politics and the way the wind's blowing. And I think 2 years from now, even though, again, young minorities and minorities are being killed by police officers, the NFL's anthem thing will no longer be a thing. Just mark my words.
No, I agree with you, and I think this is all also, sadly enough, Franco, a smokescreen for the concussion lawsuits, for their constant mismanagement of domestic violence, for the fact that as more and more research becomes public, it's becoming very apparent that parents of young children are thinking twice, and we may get to a point where they're not even thinking about it. They're just saying absolutely no, Franco, to allowing their child to participate for a health reason. So I think that this is all one giant smokescreen for their bottom line to protect what little ground they have, because they've completely abdicated the moral ground, in my opinion, and they're literally just making it clear, as you said, it's about money. We don't care about players, because if you cared about players, you'd get serious about concussions. I think I say this every week, but it's worth repeating, Franco. You and I, on the radio show back in New York, almost 6+ years ago, talked about this back then, and it hasn't changed. We keep talking about the same thing with the NFL, and we only have this conversation about the NFL. I've heard reports and people that on Twitter say, well, the NBA has a policy. Yeah, but the NFL is the one that is mismanaging it, and the NBA policy was just you could have that argument if you want, but again, we're not. To me, it's not the same. It doesn't equate, because the NFL is enforcing it in a way, and having a president of the United States, as you said, make it a thing that he's talking about and potentially throwing people out of the country. That's where it becomes different for me. Where the NBA just wants their players to look nice, but they're not subjecting them to arcane rules of making sure that they are completely compliant with the ownership. So the other thing I do want to point out before we move on, Franco, is that though NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell did say that there was a vote, there apparently sources in the room are saying that there was no official vote. The league execs polled owners and knew how they'd vote, but didn't hold an official vote. And that's the other thing that I think is worth noting, because this also has the potential to come around where if there's enough public attention, if the players start getting upset to the point where they are refusing to play on the field, if they are continuing to just protest, and again, making this a bigger issue than it was, you might have ownership saying, well, we never voted for it, so we should get rid of it. And I think that's maybe the fast track for this. And then they also did note that Jed York, owner of your 49ers, had abstained from voting. There was also a report that the second abstention was from Raiders owner Mark Davis, who apparently was one of the most eloquent speakers on the social justice issues, and then abstained from the vote as well. So, and also you want to get into Chris Johnson, owner of the Jets, who publicly said that he would pay for his players' fines. So at the very least, the very slim silver lining for me, Franco, is at least there's some owners that, while it didn't make that big of a fuss publicly, at least behind the scenes, it's a much different picture than what Commissioner Goodell and the NFL executives were painting in terms of how all ownership felt about this policy.
Yeah, I think there's, as you said, for 6 years we've thrown our heads against the wall here, and talked about the money idea and the fact that there's a lot of wrong things going on, but we still watch it. We still talk about fantasy. So while we do have a moral high ground here, and I think it's important that somebody points out the hypocrisy, we'll never see a wide-scale ban of NFL. I think eventually, and when our kids are alive, that the game might not exist at the same level. That's probably true, but it's not coming anytime soon. Just like the numbers from the draft. So NFL is here to stay. but let's not paint them as an organization that's altruistic or good or anything else. They're basically the Walmart of sports brands. They exist because they make money, not because they do the right thing. And we'll just close with this. The NBA to NFL comparison is apples to oranges, different baskets. And the NBA doesn't make a huge spectacle out of every national anthem. And that's the biggest difference, I think. And that's kind of the point. Like, you can't compare the two because they're not presented the same way. And the argument isn't the same.
No. Yeah, I agree. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll move on to other subjects at hand. But again, something that I think you and I are going to be talking about for many, many years to come. But we do want to focus a little bit on the actual sports that are going on. NBA Finals, Celtics are up 3-2 after taking out the Cavs last night, a low-scoring game. And right now we have the Warriors and the Rockets, who are all tied up right now. Taking a quick look of what the score is, it's still tied up 66-66 with 2 minutes and 40 seconds in the third quarter. Franco, what are your thoughts watching this? You're more of an NBA head than I am. Your Warriors are in the finals. Also, there's some Iguodala issues with the injuries. I don't know if he ended up playing or not, but then they had Klay Thompson, who was a game-time decision. And the discussion of, what happens when Curry gets hot and he dropped, I think it was about 28 points or more in the third quarter of the last game they played, and then Durant seemed to not quite know how to fit in. That's what, again, some analysts have said, but I want to hear it from you as the fan. What's going on with your Warriors?
Well, first off, I think analysts like to nitpick things to the point of making a story out of a non-story. To be fair, the Warriors got outplayed last game by a pretty good amount, and they especially faltered in the fourth quarter, and that was unfortunate. For the sake of good radio, I do want to point out that you're getting live updates as we shoot from the game, and that's pretty awesome. But I think the Warriors went out tonight. I think Durant and Curry will coexist. They have for 2 years now, and I don't think it's going to change. And I do think, hopefully, the Celtics triumph over evil and vanquish LeBron. One man's hope, one man's dream.
I hope so too. I think that it's going to be. What's interesting is that again, the last game seemed to be LeBron can't win it all, and LeBron can't help the entire Cleveland Cavaliers just win. And again, it was J.R. Smith not doing well, and it just again speaks volumes to the fact that LeBron James is sometimes underappreciated in a weird way, because a lot of analysts are like, oh, he's the slowest guy on the court. There's analysts and data about how he is slow, and then there was the discussions about, is he tired? Well, yeah, he's tired. Hell yeah, he's tired. He's been working for years and putting in a ton of mileage on his legs. So yeah, he is tired. He needs a team that can help him and surround him, and I don't think he has that with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Franco, give me your prediction. Who do we see in the finals?
Man, who would I want to see? I want to see Celtics Warriors because I think it's fresh.
Yeah.
Who do we see? Oh, man. All right, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say Brad Stevens shows his coaching muscle, outcoaches the Cavaliers. We see Celtics in 7 against the Warriors in 7 in the finals. I will comment on your point that I do think LeBron is underappreciated. I know I dislike LeBron the person. Actually, I can't even say that. I dislike LeBron the personality. That's probably the right way to say it. But nothing but respect for his game. I mean, he puts the game on his back. People were sad after the first 2 games that the Cavaliers were out, and then LeBron single-handedly won 2 games by himself. Yeah. And I'm not sure you can count him out. And history says Game 7s are where LeBron thrives. So if it gets to Game 7, I think we just see the Cavs advance. And the Celtics will reload. They have 2 major players that are out right now, in Hayward and Irvin, and I think they come back next year. But it might not be their year. And here's my question to you. If LeBron pulls this off somehow, if he comes back on the Celtics and then somehow breaks my personal heart and beats the Warriors, is he then the greatest ever?
That is tough. I mean, I think here's the thing that I don't know, and it's one of those where I don't know if it's a cop-out, so feel free to call me out for it, but it's like I'd rather see the complete picture, because I still think MJ's the best, but then it's like you have his time with the Wizards, and you're like, so if LeBron, and there's an interesting article on The Ringer about maybe the next phase for LeBron is being mercenary LeBron, meaning he goes from team to team signing one-year deals and just tries to win championships with various combinations of young players and is like the gun for hire, like an Old West symbol, like an Old West cowboy going from town to town righting wrongs. Like if he does that, that would be hilarious because I think that's something. Well, go ahead.
You want LeBron to be a much better Robert Horry, bouncing around and like closing out finals. I mean, that would be something.
That would be amazing if like he goes to Los Angeles for a year, maybe two, wins a championship there for however reason, then jumps ship, goes back to Miami to try to win one more championship with them, and it just becomes like, if you add LeBron into your team, are you close enough to win? And I think that would be interesting. But right now, if he comes back, I think you've got to. It's no longer a question to me. It's more like I think LeBron is better because I just feel like to have one man power through. And again, and MJ had Steve Kerr had a lot. Scottie Pippen, and I'm thinking of Steve Kerr because I was reminded on listening to radio that Michael Jordan punched out Steve Kerr when he was on the Bulls. So I think like he at least had people around him that complimented him. Whereas LeBron seems to just have a collection of randos that are just trying their best, but it feels sometimes like, and I know they're professionals, Franco, but I picture it's the same level of output that you and I would have if we were with LeBron, where we would just be missing threes, getting destroyed, and then just trying our best to get out of LeBron's way. Yeah,
so you're right, you did cop out, but you came back in the end. But at the same time, I do think that question generally is a cop out. I feel like every playoff time we ask that question as, not that we're media, well, you know what, we're media, we're sports media. As sports media people, we ask that question. I think it's inherently unfair. I think you have to divide the game into eras. So you have the earlier era where Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, hands down, probably the greatest. Then you had the 80s and the Showtime era where if it wasn't Magic Johnson or Akeem Olajuwon, you may be confused. Or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then you had the MJ era where it was MJ and possibly like Malone. And then you have the modern era where it's probably Steph Curry and LeBron. I think if you divide by eras, it's the fairest way to do it. I don't think you can do a comparison. Again, this is the NBA, NFL. Apples, apples, oranges, oranges. They're not the same game. The game's not the same. The talent level isn't the same. So, yeah. So I will say LeBron's probably the greatest player in the modern era, as much as I hate saying that because I don't like him. But mad props to him, and I'm fascinated to see where this goes. And Brendan, real fast, before we move on.
Yeah.
What's your prediction for the finals?
Celtics, Warriors win Game 6.
All right.
6.
I like it.
But I would love to see. I think it's just crazy that Celtics are even knocking on the door with. If you had said that Hayward's out and Kyrie Irving's out, if you take them out at the beginning of the season, where do the Celtics land? I don't think anybody across the nation would have said they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, let alone make the playoffs. So I think that's what the great story is out of this one. But before we go, we have a couple minutes. You and I both saw Deadpool 2. We're jumping around topics today. Real quick, I loved it. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed Domino the best out of all the characters. And full-on spoilers, people. I don't care. I'm going to
Spoilers.
Okay. I enjoyed the scene where X-Force died, although I was sad because, like you, we talked a little bit before. Shatterstar I loved, and I thought he was a cool character. He's dead for now. But I did like Juggernaut. I thought he was a cool surprise villain. No one mentioned him in the marketing or the press for it. I was like, oh, I'm here for this. And Colossus always makes me laugh. I think it's a fun take on Colossus. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. The opening credits of a James Bond film made me laugh as a James Bond fan. It was a good time. I think Deadpool 1 is better, but I think Deadpool 2 is just as good, and I had a great time.
Wow, all right. I don't know if I felt the same way. Let me say that. So I enjoyed Deadpool 1 as a cinematic experience. I thought it was a great movie. It was fun to see, and it really bunked a lot of tropes for superhero movies. Deadpool 2 would have been a miniseries I would have loved to watch on HBO. It was really entertaining. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't need to see it in the theater. I feel like it would have been a great 3-part series. It just lacked that big feel for me, and so that's where I'm at. I give it, if we're going to do Siskel and Ebert, I give it a thumb and a half, so a one of these weird things.
A decapitated thumb.
Yeah, I think you should go see it. I just think you should manage your expectations, particularly if you enjoyed the Rob Liefeld run on X-Force and you love those characters. You and I kind of talked about this, really disliked the idea of killing off Bedlam. He was a significant character because of his background as an inner city youth who rises up to be a superhero. And then they also killed off Shatterstar, who was one of the first major homosexual characters to come out from the 90s era comics. So way to kill off two major beacons for equality, but then again, that is kind of the tone of Deadpool anyway. I did love Domino. I thought she was the best part of the movie, and I would see it in theaters just for her performance, but I could fast forward through the opening monologue crap, and the emotional pension they put on the line could have been done a lot faster for me.
I agree with that. I still stand by the opening. I thought it was funny. Celine Dion, great call. I felt like TJ Miller was not there. He was physically there, but I feel like given all the turmoil that actor's gone through and has publicly been reported on, I get why it seems like he was kind of vacant during it. It didn't seem as though he was present for that film. Now, I don't know if you got that vibe, but I just felt like I think he's just kind of going through the motions at this point.
Yeah, we know he's gone from Marvel after this, so
yeah.
I think they set up Dopinger to be the new Weasel, which is unfortunate because that's actually one of the better parts of the comic books is how morally ambiguous and cowardly Weasel is, but that's fine. I won't miss TJ Miller. Bye.
Bye, TJ. But I think I measure my movies now by whether or not it's worth seeing full price or buying or using your movie pass. I think this is a clear movie pass film. You won't feel much guilt about going to see it. It's fun. It kills some time. But I think I'm with you, Franco, in the sense I wouldn't pay outright full price for it. If I had to do it again, I think I would have watched it at home.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. But worth seeing, but maybe don't go to matinee or go on.
Go to matinee.
Yeah, don't go like prime time and buy the luxury seats. It's not worth that.
All right, Franco, we got to wrap this thing up, baby. What did you learn?
I learned that we both begrudgingly respect LeBron.
Yeah.
What'd you learn?
I learned that we both agreed that we could do with no more TJ Miller. We came to the conclusion immediately and spent a minute on it. Agreeable.
Yeah. So not friend of the show, TJ Miller, we bid you adieu. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
For the BFF show, my name is Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Have a good week. Season
Peace.
3.